Okay, so in today's video, I'm going to go over the two frameworks I use when it comes to building systems, ops, and infrastructure. Now, these two frameworks are frameworks that I've gathered as I work throughout the years, and basically these frameworks are pretty simple. Like there's one that is good for like getting MVPs out, and there's one that is very good for like having solid, scalable stuff, out there. So we cover the first version, which is basically the B5F, and that stands for build fast, fail fast, fix fast. Now with this one, we just want to get an MVS out as fast as possible. Now MVS just stands for minimum viable solution, MVS, as fast as possible. So for this whole video, I'll use the analogy of a car. Now according to Cambridge, a car is basically, a vehicle with four wheels, an engine, a drivetrain, and a steering wheel that can carry a few people. So if you are taking this into consideration, then with the B5F framework, the only things that we need for a car is basically four wheels, a drivetrain, a steering wheel, and an engine. Basically the plain version, like the minimum solution that we can basically provide. Now that being said, this is not comfortable to sit on. Nevertheless, should a few people want to sit on this car, they could basically sit on the drivetrain. It's not comfortable, but then it can work. Now, a real life example for this is basically like SaaS businesses or software businesses. And I would take Oracle for an example. If you know their history, the first three versions of Oracle were basically not usable. They were not that good. And basically they found their fit with the fifth version. It's only with the fifth version, which is after 7 years, did they get like a usable version that was actually good. They basically used this B5F framework to basically build the whole empire that is there today. Then there's a second option, which is basically the 3PD framework, and that stands for plan, prototype, prove, and then deploy. So with this one, we basically want to make sure that before we deploy it, so before we deploy the stuff that we want to deploy, we have already planned it, prototyped it, so like have some kind of use cases, prove against anything that can happen, and then deploy it. Now, if we can't prove against, all the problems and obstacles that this system, this operation, or this infrastructure is going to face, then we go back to the planning phase. Now, I'm going to use the same analogy, and with the car, analogy, if you are going with the same definition of four wheels, a drivetrain, and all of these stuff, then with this one, we have these four wheels. We have our headlights, our tail lights, a spoiler, a window, windshield, and even door handles, because we've basically prototyped and proved everything against what might possibly happen. And a real life example for this is basically like the digital and online courses, since I'm mostly in the online space. But then like for a course, if you want to basically launch a course that is actually good, you number one need to plan the content. After you've planned the content, you need to prototype it by getting early users. So you get people who are interested in using, or interested in consuming a course and using it. Then only when you have early users, only when you have early users and these users or these clients have gotten results, can you only launch it. So basically, you proving your course with case studies is basically the proof part of the 3PD framework. Only then can you launch it, because if you don't have case studies, if you don't have results, then you have to go back to number one again, planning, prototyping, proving, and then you launch it. The question then becomes, okay, how do I know which framework to use? And for that, there's this simple question that I always ask myself to get clarity about, which framework to use. And that is this a one-way or two-way door? So basically, one-way door, they open like one direction, like if you go through the door, you go through the door. You don't basically come back through the door in the opposite. It doesn't open the opposite direction. Most of the doors of most bedrooms are a one-way door. Like you always open it to the same direction. And a two-way door is basically like a rotating door, or some of these doors that open two ways. So is it a one-way or a two-way door? Now, if it's a one-way door, then basically use the 3PD method. And a business example, or like a normal example of that, would be like an email campaign. If you mess up an email campaign, you are kind of cooked, because if you have the wrong link, then you are basically putting money down the drain. because someone will click on this link and they'll think you kind of fooled them into clicking like a broken link, so they'll unsubscribe. Or even if you send another email, that would be you spamming them 2 times, so they might unsubscribe again. So that is a one-way door. Like if you do something that you cannot come back quickly from it or cannot recover quickly from it, then always use the 3PD method, which is basically plan, prototype, prove. Now the two-way door is basically the B5F method. So if you can basically mess something up and recover within like a few minutes or hours, then use the B5F method, because that one is pretty easy to fix what you basically failed at. And an example for this would be like tracking systems. So when you are building tracking systems, you do not start with everything that you want at once. You start with like the small stuff. So you want to see, okay, how many leads are you getting, how many calls are you booking, how many cancelled calls are you getting, and then from there you see how many reschedules and all of these stuff. So these are basically the two systems that I use when it comes to building systems. Pretty simple. I hope you had fun watching this video, and we'll see us in the next one.